Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back. This week, I am super excited. You are joining me, Rebel Ray, your hostess with the mostest. And I am here with a dynamic leader from our community, Mario Enriquez. Let's go.
Hey,
Hey, hey,
hey.
hey. We're super excited to have Mario today. Mr. Enriquez is running. Ba-dum. Come on, you guys. Drum roll and heart it up. He is running for District
4.
Come on, District 4 for the City of Stockton Council. And I'm ready for change. I don't know about you, Mario.
I'm ready. Let's do this.
Before we get into that, we really want to know about you. There's been a lot of things that have been going on here in Stockton. And, there are a lot of different perspectives, there are a lot of different understandings of who you are as a leader and what our expectation is from you,
Yeah.
right? There's I'm not going to lie, there's some abandonment issues that some Stocktonians are having with others that have left and outgrown this area and moved on in politics. I never had that misunderstanding. I believe in growth. I usually use this tree as a symbol of how the person, the self, and higher consciousness can move towards vitality. But I want to start with you as a person. You as a person. So your mom, you were born in Mexico, or were you?
So my parents were born in Mexico, and then they came here in the late '80s, and born in San Jose, but raised in the Central Valley.
Wow.
And that was, as you said earlier, that was a big thing that my mom always said, is that you have two jobs in this life: give back to your community and get an education.
Come on.
So that's
Come
always
on.
been something that's been embedded in my being, who I am as a person,
Yes.
and I've always seen it as a way to pay it forward. I see
Yes.
my mom coming here, her sacrifices, and if I don't do the best that I can to be the best public servant, then I'm putting her sacrifice in vain, and I just can't let that happen for all that she's done for me.
So, is your dad still in the picture? People have this thing about two parent households, and it's shaping our leaders. I think some of the best fundamental leaders come from different backgrounds. Can you tell us a little bit more about your family?
Yeah, so for the most part, my older sister, my mom, and I have always been a unit. My dad was a union member. He was a cement mason, and right before I started UOP in Lathrop, we actually lost our home, and it was at that point there was a lot going on with him. He left the picture, and then as a young adult, my mom became a single mom. So it was a different type of impact for me and my sister, and the fact that my family was displaced was really challenging. Being especially in Latino families, even though I was the
Yeah.
youngest, but being the only male in the family, my mom really did put a lot of pressure on me to take care of the family. But at the same time, I had two strong women in my life that were still taking care of the family as well. So the three of us really gelled as my dad left the picture. But I mean, starting at being 18 years old, the only real male figure that I had left the picture, and then now taking care of my family while going to UOP really just opened my eyes to the challenges and the over just the obstacles that we were going through. But for me, the people of Stockton helped my family in my time of need. So that really laid the seeds of community for me in the Central Valley and in Stockton particularly.
Interesting. And the one thing that I learned about you, Mario, as you began to do your campaign and you said, I'm running, I'm going to run, I want to make this city better. I think we tend to forget that. We tend to forget the fact that we have young individuals who are here, who love the area that they're in, and they want to give back. And a lot of times we're so closed off to that. You hear a lot of times when Stockton is associated with a crab in a barrel syndrome, and they don't allow for new progressive thinking. We're very conservative in the county. Stockton being right in the middle of the county, sometimes also have closed mindedness about the understanding of sexual orientations, our LGBT creative community, our entertainment community, our arts community. What do you have to say to that? What do you have to say to people who are closed minded, whether it be for religious purposes or they just don't want to accept a person because of their orientation or their lifestyle?
Yeah, I would say as an openly gay man, I mean, I live my truth and I have to be authentic of who I am because I can't be any other way. I can't be fake. I can't lie about who I am. And that's something that my family has always pressed on me. And, in today's day and age, it's 2024. The fact that we still have over 500 anti-LGBTQ bills across the country, the impact it's having on lives, like literal lives are at stake. People are dying. And we don't have people to understand. Yeah, we all may not be LGBTQ, but be an ally, be able to empathize and have heart and say, you know what, you are part of this community. I see you and I'm here to take care of you and support you. In what ways can I help uplift all of your identities? And that's something that I want to do, that I continue to do, not just as a human being, but also in this path of being a public servant. Because even now, as you said, in the county, it can be conservative, but we need leaders to step up and be that example.
So let me run before we get and dive down into a lot of your accolades and just again where your stance is. I jumped right into it because I really truly believe in speaking the truth. I truly believe in holding a large stance on the righteousness and the justice and equal justice of the people. And sometimes I think people feel also that that's a disrupting mind frame when you're able to stand and not waver from what your belief system is. That's one thing that I learned about you in your campaign, being known for your beloved orange color in your shoes and knocking on every door that you possibly can in that first primary. And that was important. That was important for me to see, not just being a South Stockton leader in the city of Stockton, but we're always looking for a dais that is working together and have the potential to work together to make progressive change. And progression doesn't mean, the things that we fear so much as contents of religion or context of nationalism that we have seen, the individualism also that we see. We have to move as a collective. We cannot be discombobulated by cognitive dissonance. If it's a giraffe, it's a true giraffe. It's not a hippopotamus with a giraffe mask on. It's a giraffe. Call it out. And so again, what we're having for the presidential candidates and what I'm having to see, it is cognitive blatant dissonance to not believe the type of energy surrounding this presidential election and all the way flowing down from our congressional, our state caucus, our assembly. There is a lot of things we're seeing, and it's concerning with the state of America.
Yeah, I'll say that. I mean, we talk about new leaders and up and coming leaders. That's really what we need now in today's day and age, right? We can't just settle for what we have and just that same culture of rotating and cycling the same old, and people are tired of it. People shouldn't just say, oh, well, this is the best person. Says who? Okay. Let's show the community about who are we actually developing and bringing up. And I mean, even at a local level, I mean, that's really why I'm running. And I see even more now in this political landscape of really Stocktonians want something different and they want a fresh change. And I'm just one person on the dais, but collectively we can push the needle to say, let's have these conversations. Let's have these insights that we haven't had in decades. And can you imagine those fresh insights and the more folks we have at a table making decisions that impact our day-to-day, it's going to be game-changing.
And let me tell you, we're actually making space for the new leadership. Baby boomers are retiring or they're not in good health, and we need progressive young people to get into position but they have to be wanted, right? And I tell people now, the young 80s, the young 70s babies, we're now the young elders, right? We know we have the teachings of the baby boomers and the ones before them. But I kind of want to get into your accolades here. You serve as the director of the you have served as director of the Center of Identity and Inclusion at the University of Pacific. You currently do that now.
Yes, correct.
That is, that's awesome. Recently engaged and informed the nation's network of LGBTQ elective and appointed leaders as Victories Institute's Director of Constitute Engagement in Washington, D.C. So I have to Get back to that because that was a mouthful. Um, Led the programming for the annual International LGBTQ Leaders Conference and a gathering that attracts more than 500 attendees annually and is in preeminent leadership event for LGBTQ political leadership.
Yeah.
That's really dope, Mario.
Yeah, thank
My
you.
goodness, to blow your horn. In 2010, so Mario, you moved to Washington and you worked at United US. It's formerly known as the National Council of La Raza, right? We love that. You are Mexican all day and every day. I love it. The nation's largest Latino civil rights organization, focusing on building a pipeline of Latinx youth leadership. Selected in 2013 as a National Choral Fellow in Public Affairs in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the nation's oldest leadership development program focused on the nonprofit, government, and business sectors of young professionals going into those sectors, and was selected as the Higher Education Graduate Fellow with the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute. He was placed in the office of Representative Eric Swalwell of a Democrat of California in the U.S. Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions, which they have as HELP, right?
Mhm.
And so during his 9 months on Capitol Hill, so you actually made it to Capitol Hill.
Ooh, I was on Capitol Hill during the Obama-Trump transition, and that was a whirlwind.
That was a whirlwind because
Yeah.
it was a bunch of individuals exiting and individuals coming in that just did not have the same belief systems.
Oh yeah.
So you really needed to be able to maintain your professionality,
Mhm.
be able to probably work across what we call the lines,
Yeah.
right? Between Democrats and Republicans. And so you have your bachelor's degree in sociology from the University of Pacific in Stockton, California, and a master's in public administration from USC Price School of Public Policy in Los Angeles, California. You did everything that is right.
Oh,
You did everything that you were supposed to do for some of the leaders that we want to see.
Yeah.
We have leaders with lived experiences that became influencers like Jason Lee and that came back. They were homegrown here, left with their experiences, identified their traumas, and dealt with the problems ahead, influenced the nation with their personalities. And then we also have leaders like yourself, Mario, who went traditionally to school, who come from a two-parent background and a wholesome family, right? So as I was saying in the Democratic race, I know you're a Democrat. I think what people really want to know, and those that are on the fence and they don't know, who is your candidate that you're running against?
Yeah, so currently for the general election, I'm running against Gina Valadez Bracamonte, a registered Republican who I'm running against. But I mean, right now it's very clear the differences of who we are and what we're fighting for Stockton.
So for some of us that are not quite understanding, because I have viewers from all different levels that view the Pruned Tree.
Mm-hmm.
For those that don't follow the politics or just a little bit burnt out on the democratic processes of the United States and the local government, what are some of your stance versus some of her stance that you can kind of educate us on that bring a concern or actually just you want us to pay attention to?
Yeah, I think one of the things, and not just for my race, but just I ask all of you to look at all the races and who shows up and who doesn't, who speaks up and who doesn't. And it's very clear when people go just to take a photo, or folks who go to events just because they're being controlled by their political consultants of what they have to do. But in reality is, if you're really about the community, you need to show up and speak and have a pulse in the community. And I can say I have that, and my opponent does not. We talk about values. District 4 and all these races is going to come down to values. So for you as a voter, what do you care about? What are the things that you want to see in your elected officials that you can say, you know what, that aligns with who I am, and they're going to vote and be aligned with things that I also am aligned with. And
that's funny that you say that, though. I think, I'm always going to speak truth to the light. And you got to be focusing on that light, though. You
Yeah.
can't be on no shadow work and you being in a line with shadow.
Yeah. And being transparent, right? I mean,
Right.
you have to show who's endorsing you, what events you go to. You want to show what you're actively doing in the community.
Right.
And I am doing that, and my opponent is not. You want to talk about transparency? Great. Tell us who you're endorsed. Tell us what you believe in. Tell us how you would vote. Tell us if you actually go to city council meetings, right? It boggles my mind how candidates want to apply. It's basically applying for a job.
Mm-hmm.
You have to show that you're prepared for this job, that you're qualified, your lived experiences match that job description, and you actually go to something that you're actually going to be doing for 40 years if elected.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people were really focused on the point of people coming and being from this area. And I don't know if you got that feedback, but I don't care at this point. I want you to value what we value from this area, but also grow what we have. There are a lot of historical things that we have going on in Stockton. You are now being recorded here, and we're on a pre-recording, everybody. I usually do my lives, but we're now being recorded down here in downtown Stockton. When young people, young families that we're trying to retain for city government positions, for policing, for fire department, for nursing, and they come and see our city in blight, the if the leadership is not caring about maintaining the overall beautification and progressiveness of even the places we got to join together mutually, whether you Republican or not. I don't know. Throw the whole dice away. That's where I'm at with it. If we can't find a way to coexist, we're so stuck on flags being raised, right? You're demonizing a whole movement of progressiveness, and we have to be careful because a lot of times that procession is rooted in systematic racism, and a lot of our people of color are I'm very much I talk about the education of the Black man and the Black woman and the Latino woman. America is not even 60 years past segregation and separation due to the color of your skin, due to your orientation. We just got our orientation rights to marry same sex in the 2000s. So when we're talking about a blatant hate and racism, I think that's why I know I'm standing with you. I am personally, and I'm going to say this personally, not as the leader of any nonprofit. I have to say that because I was attacked early on when the primaries first went out. I was personally attacked by people from the other camp. But I am personally standing with you.
Yeah, thank you.
I am endorsing Mario Enriquez. I'm telling that now as R.C. Thompson, the person, because I believe in you. You showed up for our community. You have the background, you have the understanding, you have the leadership qualities. You also have the humility. So I look at my leaders. Do you have the ability to have the emotional response that I'm looking for when people come to you on the dais and they're hurting? They come to you in the street because you still got to live amongst us, right?
Yeah.
So they come to you in the street with what's going on with them. And you truly show that you care, that you have humility to listen. I think people too often redirect things towards or project things that are unhealthy. But I feel like as a leader, I think you always have two ears. It's a way that you show up in community. I have not seen that from the leadership, and I am very concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes back to your point about being active and having empathy, listening to people, actively listening. And that's one of the things, going back to the differences of how I operate. And I have a track record, and folks will always know who I am, what I bring to the table. My heart is always on my sleeve. I'm always happy to answer any question and actually come up with an idea. In terms of grit and hustling and finding a solution, I have the energy that city of Stockton deserves, District 4 deserves, to show he finds ways to create a solution that's community focused.
And that's what we need.
And I always do that to the table, and I always
Ashe.
bring it.
Ashe. And I'm not going to bash Gina. Gina has done a lot of work really well through her nonprofit. I think it's called Bread of Life. And so I'm not going to bash her, but what I am going to do is the endorsements that I see are very disappointing. You know, as a leader, Gina, that we're dealing with a lot of shootings, a lot of violence in the city of Stockton. To be endorsed by the Rifle Association with the slogan "Shoot Straight" really says a lot to me. There is a way that we can capitalize on coming together mutually to go against the crime that's happening in Stockton, as well as being very trauma informed, being informed on how we show up and what we say and whose money we take. Because a lot of times those individuals who are in those associations, and don't get me wrong, I was a person that before I knew better, was looking to be a member of the NRA. And we come from a very strong background from my Oklahoma roots, where guns are just a part of the family.
Yeah.
They're handled correctly, though. They are gun ownership. I come from a full military background family that have served over 100 years, 3 generations to the U.S. Militaries, from Air Force to Army Rangers to I can't even think of the Navy. When I tell you we have a heavy family that is, I love them much. They're full of Republicans. And some of them are Democrats, but we understand there are things that we just draw a line in the sand. But what we don't do is we don't threaten with slogans. And that hurt me to see that endorsement. And Gina, you're more than welcome to come on the Pruned Tree Podcast to really help us understand what your stance is. But now and more than ever, the fear mongering that people are feeling, right? After COVID, there was no retribution to even coming to the table and saying, listen, we're going to be okay. We just went through a pandemic. We lost so many things. It just got out of hand, right? There was no pause. When you go through something that traumatic, it has to be a pause.
Yep, absolutely. And
we're looking for leaders to rebuild this infrastructure. We know that California is having a hard time. We know that. But we need progressive leaders that can say, hey, I'm willing to be bipartisan if I have to go across the lines and work to get this infrastructure together. Are you willing to do that, Mario?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm proud to say that I have a track record of working with folks all across the aisle. You know, even though I'm a Democrat, I work with everybody to get the solutions that we need to, whether it was working on the Pittsburgh City Council, helping my boss, the council member at the time in Pennsylvania, get things done, going and meeting with other council members and policy aides on Capitol Hill, as I mentioned, when we were going through the Obama-Trump transition, still having to work with people on the Senate, on the House side, and that's how we come up with solutions. So I gained those skills of consensus building and working across the aisle, and that's what I'm bringing to the Stockton City Council race, and also if elected on the dais. Again, it goes back to the differences in qualifications. And, you know, again, folks might say, oh, he's a Democrat, he's not going to work with anybody. I have a track record, and I'm always ready to work with anybody, because as council members, we have to realize that we work for everybody.
That's right.
We don't pick and choose constituents in the district. Oh, I only want to serve these people and not these other folks.
Yep.
I serve everybody. And that's why you see me in South Stockton, North Stockton, all throughout Stockton, because I represent all of Stockton if elected. So, and that's what I continue to do in my community work. But we have to think about, when I said earlier, who shows up.
Who shows up?
Who shows up for the pride flag raising? You fight and you represent the LGBTQ community, whether you like it or not. Again, it goes back to values. Who shows up? Because I don't see Gina showing up. When we talk about city council meetings, who takes notes? Who wants to be thoughtful about the decisions that are happening now? So when you actually start the job, you actually know what you have to do to create policies.
Come on.
I do that. That's what I have. That's what also, it's about modeling good leadership.
There it is.
You said earlier about how city council members even now don't show up.
Right.
They don't have the ideas. When was the last time you actually heard someone say, I have a new ordinances I want to propose?
There it is.
It's rubber stamping, and people are tired of the rubber stamping,
We're
the yes,
tired.
the no's. Sometimes they ask questions and the answer's on page 2.
There it is.
Do your research. If you're not willing to do the work, step to the side and let new leaders step up and represent our people.
And I think a lot of times too, I want to address the mudslinging.
Mm-hmm.
The mudslinging is not even strategic anymore. It's just so blatant, disrespectful, and classless.
Yeah.
And even if you're an internet gangster, and I'm going to call the internet gangsters out, we have come through a council society, a council society mantra where you can write a letter, you can write an email and try to destroy a person. And I'll always acknowledge that energy, but I send it back to the sender.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're not walking in your purpose, you're too busy trying to control what's happening around you versus bringing everyone together to unify and to heal our community, you need to step aside.
That's right.
It's time now. It's time for the nonsense to stop. Mm-hmm. We just had those shootings. How many more babies need to die by shooting themselves, being full of anger, not having a place, a shelter to go? Why are we normalizing babies coming out of tents in parks? Why are we normalizing the trash buildup? When we can come together, we can put people in housing. We're sitting on so many blatant buildings in the city of Stockton that can be converted into housing and also shops underneath.
Yeah.
There are people who are moving forward, but also those that are in power and the governance over San Joaquin County and Stockton need to move together.
Yeah.
What are your plans to support moving together and connecting with our county officials?
Yeah, I think one of the big things is the consensus building, is building those relationships. And that's one step, right? The first thing that I've noticed coming in as a candidate has been there's not that relationship of like reaching out across, not the political aisle, but reaching to the county supervisors and the council members. Because there's a lot of money at the county level and the state level,
Yes.
But we need council members that say, "Oh, well, I'm just a council person. What can I do?" But it's that level of energy and work ethic that you have to push people, not in a disrespectful way, but sometimes you have to say, "Hey, these are demands of my constituents, and I am fighting to get these resources." You don't see that energy and that fire from our council members. We need that new energy. And that's why I talk about the next generation, young people, leaders that have the energy to say, hey, you know what? If you don't have that energy to fight for me, step to the side. But I have seen other city councils operate where they were so intentional with fighting for their people that they got those resources from the state level, congressional level, down to the county and the city. They
funneled that money down. I was very hurt, when I was invited to Jason Lee got a bunch of our leaders together, whether it was city, county, government officials, small businesses, nonprofits. And when we were told about those Prop 1 funds and we hadn't even applied or even tried to apply in the first couple of rounds, I said, what are we doing as a city?
Yeah.
We need the money. And I know there has been corruption. There's corruption everywhere.
Yeah.
We have to get the right people in, get the bad apples out, and we got to fix this problem.
Yeah.
We have historical buildings that have blight and fecal matter and different other things that they're dealing with. I would love that our civic center down there, our city hall, the old buildings, that's blight. Yeah. When they're run down, when there's not money that's allocated to even build our infrastructure.
Yeah.
We currently don't have an outdoor play area that's designated for just like batting cages and a local swimming pool or ice skating rink that's all together. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? We have that ability. Looking at, look at Laguna. I even take my kids up to Dublin. I love their little waterfall splash, little aqua center that they have. And I'm like, where is Stockton on the progressiveness?
Yeah.
Besides what's going on with you, your unhealed inner self, and the trauma that you have from your inner childhood, because that's what a lot of our leaders are leading from.
Hmm.
Don't get at me because I am a mental health therapist. You
Hmm.
know, I call it out for what it is. There's a lot of unhealed trauma even in our leadership.
Yeah,
How do
absolutely.
you heal yourself when people are throwing mud at you, Mario? How do you support showing up every day and lacing up your orange shoes and you're running to
Yeah.
get these things done? How do you guide your mind? Please tell me, tell us something.
Yeah.
How
No,
do you deal with it?
I mean, I think for me, I think that's been the really challenging part is, being a candidate and all the struggles you change, right? Because, some folks aren't going to understand all of your identities, especially for someone that's me, that's so open. For me, I really have learned the last 19 months of campaigning that
Mm.
really ground myself with my family, coming
Mm.
home late at night after going to a council meeting or
Mm.
going to community events and just really sitting down with my mom and just processing the day, the week, how I feel.
A
I,
safe space.
yeah, and I'm lucky. I'm sure a lot of kids say, but I have the best mom in the world, and she's someone who really grounds me. And what one of my campaign managers, she always says, she's like, Mario, like I see your mom as like your Michelle Obama. Like she's really that person
Oh,
that centers you and grounds you and checks
yes.
you and even checks your ego. Right? I think we need those folks in our lives to check us when we're doing well,
Hmm.
and also just in terms of staying grounded with not being corrupted, not going into something that you don't align yourself with. And I've always held that to my truth, and my mom has been really that person for me. Because you're right, it does get to you, especially locally here in politics and the
Yes.
corruption and all the things. And I think also on the other side, it's also a benefit for me because I also, even though I'm from the community, I've had time to leave and go out to other parts of the country to learn different things and to come back to my city. But what's great is that I don't have those established alignments or to say, oh, you're in this silo or you're on this camp.
Right.
I'm here for everyone. And I think that's the thing that's throwing people off in a good way,
Right.
to say, hey, this is what modeling good
I
leadership
think that's what
is.
modeling good leadership is. And how do we actually connect across the board? Because
Hmm.
again, it takes a couple of deciding votes to move the actual city forward, not
That's right.
just one.
That's right.
So, where is your stance with is it can you share with us who you're going to be endorsing and supporting their campaigns? Can you share with us one person that you're really for sure?
Yeah. So current candidates right now, I mean, one of the things that I've really been keeping in tabs has been really just having sit downs, one-on-ones with all the candidates. And again, I really pay attention to, as I said earlier, who shows up, who speaks up on the issues, who has that fire and that energy. And, even though as a registered Democrat, I've engaged more with the endorsed Democrats, with the San Joaquin County Democrats, particularly in District 2 race. I'm looking at Waqar Rizvi.
Okay.
He's someone who is not just a Pacific alum, but is also part of the Rotary Club,
Okay.
but really has a policy background that can really best serve our city.
Okay.
With the mayor's race, right, I look at, obviously, we have Tom Petty and Christina Fugazi running. One of the things I really appreciate about Christina Fugazi is her policy background, the insights.
Mm.
She has institutional knowledge
Mm.
that can really benefit our community. And for me, again, right, I want to learn and understand. Yes, people might say things about all the candidates, but again, it really comes down to who can I have a relationship with, who's going to listen to me, and who's going to be able to say, you know what, this is a good policy idea that we can create that's going to create the 4 votes, but also benefit the people of Stockton. So I'm willing to work with any candidate and actually any elected official, colleagues of mine, to say this is what we need to do for our city.
Mhm.
But again, for all the races, pay attention who speaks and who shows up.
Okay.
But I'm willing to work with anyone that gets elected to move our city forward.
So, where are your specific stance? And I'm going to call out 3 that everyone is watching in this moment in time: housing and the unhoused.
Mm,
Okay, especially with the new law that has been pushed down by the Supreme
mm,
Court, and the economic development or the career development of the area, bringing that workforce, but also bringing in a culture again. that allows for our communities to thrive, because you're bringing in entertainment industry downtown, you're bringing the arts back downtown, you're bringing in maybe some type of credits or ordinances that support going against those land owners or those that have bought these buildings, and they just sit on them because they believe where it's a hedge fund of some sort or whatever. What is your stance on crime? So these are the three things that we are really looking at as a full city right now, whether you're Republican or Democrat. What is your stance, and how strong are you going to pursue those things?
Yeah. Well, first, when we talk about our unhoused community, I mean, obviously, I shared earlier, I mean, that's something that I went through with my family. So for me, our unhoused population is very personal to me, being unhoused myself. But we also have to approach people in a very humane way. We just can't say, oh, well, there's a shelter, just go to the shelter. It's not that black and white. We have to understand that folks are unhoused for many reasons. It could be drugs, it could be mental health, it could be because you couldn't afford your house and you're in a house because you have housing affordability.
You might be a registered sex offender.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of people think, well, they're out on their own. They committed this crime. I don't want my taxpayer dollars housing them. No way.
Yeah.
Well, where are they going to go?
Yeah, exactly. And also thinking that, if you have pets, your belongings, and sometimes shelters don't allow all those things.
Don't allow it.
You have to meet folks where they're at as well. One of the things I know I've been looking at has been Mayor Todd Gloria in San Diego. He has a safe sleeping program.
Okay.
We talk about the downtown, and this is also connected to crime and the blight here in this area in downtown Stockton, is that all these things are interconnected. So when you really think about it, and if you think about a safe sleeping program, it can say, let's take a building, let's take a plot of land. And what they do in San Diego is that they have tents because you're meeting them where they're at, where they can still have their pets. They're getting their services. They can eat meals. They have showers.
So it's more of a transition versus a jerk out of their personal.
Exactly.
Because everyone is trying to find, it sounds like, an homeostasis. They're trying to, when you're in a position where you have a heightened emotional response to everything around you, you can't trust anybody. You got to sleep with one eye open.
Yeah.
You have to build a little community around you just so you can feel safe. And I think people take that humanitarian lens because they look at the blight and the problem, the trash buildup, the drugs and the opioids and everything, the nakedness, the fecal matter, anything that we're seeing with homelessness. And they look at all of that and they generalize it and they say, throw the whole thing away. Just bust them off. I think that is the most inhumane thing. That's me talking as a mental health therapist, trauma-informed specialist, and a social worker. Get at me. Right?
Yeah.
That's the most inhumane thing you can say.
Yeah.
Especially when there are elders, there are vulnerable populations. If you've never been through the trauma of being unsheltered or have that safety net ripped from underneath you, you don't know the emotional turmoil that it does for you, right? So you talk from lived experience. You became homeless with your mother. Talk to me about that for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, when we lost our house right before I started my time at Pacific, it was unsettling. It's like, how do we pay the bills? How do we get tuition paid? How do we ensure that you have a roof over your head? And it was the type of situation where, we had lost our home, right? Something that I had always known as it's my safety blanket. It's something that is secure. And then to no longer have that, I was going to UOP, but I had to fight to become a resident assistant just to have on-campus housing. So folks might say, oh, well, you still had a place over your head. But that feeling of insecurity, financial insecurity, not knowing your family's going to be okay. I mean, us working 2-3 jobs to help pay my sister's tuition when she transferred to San Francisco State. My mom going from house to house with our cousins and our uncles and our aunts. I mean, for me, it just felt like I wasn't able to provide something secure for my family, right? Because it fell on me. And I'm not saying that as like, it was, of course, it was a challenge, but, we have to understand that folks face housing insecurity at different levels, and you have to meet them where they're at.
There it is.
So when I see people in the community, I met a woman in the district at Oak Park, and when it was a hot day, it was 110. It was last Saturday, and she said, Mario, Her name is Robin. She said, I can't even get to a cooling center. I'm on a wheelchair. Look at these street corners. They're not even ADA accessible. How am I going to get
Oh
on a
my
bus
God. We
to
don't
then
even
go to a
think
cooling
about those
center?
things.
They just say, oh, the cooling centers are open. But we have to meet people where they're at.
And we have to bus them.
Exactly.
So I want to ask you, with the capacity that they're saying we're working at the city of Stockton, we're at half capacity across the all of the full level, I'm hearing.
Yeah.
So how are we utilizing, say, community-based organizations or say contractual work from people here? I'm not talking about from the Bay Area, from LA, from up in Sacramento, all good, right?
Yeah.
But how do we stimulate the economic interests here with also supporting what's happening in our communities? It's nothing for us to hire, a person that is a mason or whatever, whoever does the structure. I don't know about it, but who does the structure to create those sidewalks for public works? Why are we not getting those type of contracts done in time? And why do we have to go through a system to put a ticket in? That's my problem. If we tell our representative this is what's happening, we need speed bumps, a child just got hit over here, why do we have to put a ticket through the system?
Yeah,
and that's Ask Stockton system that I'm referring to.
Oh yeah, I actively use it, and I see the bureaucracies and the red tape with it. The challenge is that, to your point of, there are a lot of people here that are from our community that want to work, and we can, when we talk about unions, right? There's so many folks that are part of unions here that are ready to do work, but they put this process of, oh, what's up on a bid? There's a bid process, but you have to think about, well, why is that bid process the way it is? Why is that in structure created that way? Why can't we recreate it? To think about, let's prioritize the people that are here, our unions that are willing to do the work, that are from here, versus them having to commute to get outside jobs, or bringing people from San Diego or LA to come up and do contract work for our city.
And we're doing it.
And we're doing it.
We're
and that's
doing
the problem.
I think the greatest embarrassment when I have to travel on behalf of being a South Stockton leader is I have to talk about our parks index score. And we always want to focus on the unsheltered and the unhoused that are in our parks, but our parks have a low index score for even being operational. Bathrooms not being open. We have the Little League who is paying the city of Stockton. Most of the Little Leagues here are paying the city of Stockton to utilize the baseball field, but they're painting the benches, they're chalking the lines, they're doing the gates, they're buying their own porta potties that don't have any bathrooms, and there's minimal lighting for our children to stay out when violence is disrupting. If we're in a positive space where we have the ability to put our children in a positive space, we need that whole ecosystem around that child to be functional.
That's right.
And we should, as taxpayers that are already heavily taxed, and again, this is a bipartisan thing, because people are tired of paying the tax that we're paying in California, period. But to have a tax on top of tax, and then have money allocated into a general fund that are not producing what we're needing. When I saw that the Planning Commission was okay to cut down mature trees that we know have a direct correlation to decreasing crime, decreasing violence, and our tree, we were before the city of Stockton was known for anything else. We were also known for the city of trees. I don't know if you remember that, but that was way long ago. We had upper to the 300,000s, 400,000s of trees. It is so freaking hot. So to cut down trees because we can't find the money to maintain the trees. I know a couple of CBOs and a couple of Tyrones around the corner who need a job. You better stop playing with me. You hear what I'm saying? And then you're teaching them a skill that necessarily doesn't need college. You're teaching them a certified program. You're teaching them to purpose, where if I get clean and sober, I can have a $27 job with the city of Stockton maintaining these trees.
That's right.
Come on. That progressive open thinking. I feel like as many people who may own their own business on the dais are not business-minded people. They're not economic thoughtful, forward progressing people who know how to put disenfranchised people back in purpose to be good, abiding citizens. You got to make pathways.
Yeah.
I mean, I could go on and on, Mario.
Yeah, no, and it's true. I mean, we talk about the pathways. It's about bringing those energies and say, how are we utilizing our funds and our money to create these pathways? So when I think about our unions, apprenticeships, you can be making six figures and no matter what education you're at to get to that pipeline to say, I went through an apprenticeship. I now have a trade that I can utilize, and I have a job here in Stockton that I don't have to leave.
Yes.
We think about our parks. When, the fact that, like you said, bathrooms aren't even working, buttons are broken. It's like, how are we maintaining that? How are we creating our light fixtures, right? That's infrastructure. It's tied to safety, as you mentioned. The fact that little leagues are paying the city of Stockton is embarrassing. The fact that we can't even utilize the resources that we have for proper things is an insult to our community.
It's an insult. And I want you all to look up the broken window theory. That broken window theory, I kind of live by when we talk about economic blight, when we talk about neighborhood action, when we talk about neighborhood transformation. You could be conservative all you want in your spending, but when it starts to come over into your conservative side of town, past the behind the security of what you think your gates hold, and you're not in your backyard attitude. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Let's not look. Are we going there today?
Let's go. Yeah.
Because the issues that we're seeing on the south side, the issues we're seeing on the north, the east, are the same issues now we're seeing on the north side.
Yeah.
And the west side. It's now a full city issue that you cannot completely get away from. Yeah. There's burglaries. My car was broken in now 3 times. I found someone who was unhoused with 2 crowbars and a couple of knives, along with a face mask and a pipe in the back of my SUV. I cannot make this up. And broken in, tried to steal my car a couple of times. Me being a single mom, always working, I'm paying bills. I'm paying for other businesses that I run. So to have that type of violation considerably all the time and not have extra money to fix a truck that helps my business, I felt like I wasn't listened to. You get what I'm saying? There, and I was told, just make a police report online. Why do we have to accept that? Yeah. So when we say that we're liberated and we're progressive, does not mean that we don't have the same baseline values that will make it a vital place to live in Stockton and to thrive in Stockton. Yeah. And I want people to know that about you, Mario. The first time I met you, I vetted you, didn't I?
Yeah. Yes, you did.
Like I do anybody else. I'm like, if you're going to be somebody that I endorse, that I say is for the people, I'm going to ask you every hard question underneath the sun. Where are you standing with crime?
Yeah, that's something that is top priority for most folks that I've talked to. And I think where I'm at is very much working with our police officers, but to see what's really happening, what's asking those questions of how is our funding being utilized in the police department. I've gotten a little bit of that being on the Measure W oversight committee, which funds a certain portion of our fire and police department. But, community policing has been something that other cities have been able to do effectively. How are our neighborhoods collaborating on this issue? Because like you said, it's not just a South Stockton issue or a North Stockton issue. It's all over Stockton, and it's something that needs to be addressed, because if we don't tackle crime, we're not going to be able to work on all these other issues like infrastructure or parks. All these things are tied together, housing affordability, to make our city feel safe, to know that if you want to walk out at 6 p.m. with your family and just take a stroll, that you feel safe and secure in any part of the city. And that's something that we have to also think about our approaches to folks, right? We can't just say,
you can't generalize.
Yeah. You just can't say police are going to go and approach every situation. You have to think, okay, well, what about our mental health specialists? What about our community-based policing? There are different approaches that we have to take. It's not just black and white. And I think that's something that I want to be thoughtful of and work with other people, community-based organizations who are doing this important work, work with our police officers, work with the city of Stockton and my colleagues when elected, and to really be able to say, what approach is working and what's not working. Because clearly right now, folks feel that crime is just increasing and that there's no solution.
There's no solution.
And
it feels rambunctious because it's not anyone that's actually have an actual solution orientation to address it. Now, I want to talk about this before we move on to the third subject of your stance and what you're going to do. And then I want you to plug where people can find where your stances are, how they can support your campaign, where they can follow you online, and how do they cast their vote. So, one of the things that I think a lot of times when you don't take history and you don't read and you don't confine with other educational, historic people who understand policy, who understand the patterns of racism and injustices in this country, when you don't surround yourself with people like that, you tend to repeat some of the disgraced conducts of what we've seen against vulnerable populations here. And one of the things that turned me off with our sitting mayor now is he used the word law and order. Law and order. We will have law and order. You started off with the state of the city as, we're going to be trauma informed, we're going to be diligent, A, B, C, and D, and ended with law and order. I have to give a conscious effort to make sure that we use a caution when we use the type of language back from the 60s and the 50s when George Wallace, if y'all don't know the name, you better go look it up. George Wallace and other leadership in policing that had underlinings and connection to Klan behavior and Klan programming and the Ku Klux Klan's understanding about how you connect to different people that don't look like you. And I'm being very nice about it. When you use strong language like that, not knowing the history, and you're governing over traumatized, vulnerable people, but yet you also have to show a firm hand against what's happening. There's a choice of words that you got to use. I'm looking for individuals who have the full picture on how to deal with everybody. I want to know right now, what is your stance on being tough on crime, but also being cognizant and trauma informed on how you talk about the historical, systematic, institutional racism of policing. We must have community policing.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. And I think that's something that, it goes down to empathy and really listening to people. And I think that's something that when you go to a city council meeting, it's just very stone cold faces. And you have to show people when you talk about crime, when the community-based policing, it's like you have to have the cultural context to your point of understanding what has happened to our communities. Everyone you talk to is going to have a different feeling of crime. So you can't generalize it. And I think that's something that I want to be able to say, yes, I want to fix crime. I want to work with my colleagues to really create solutions that are going to tackle public safety, but also do it in a way that's saying, yeah, I understand that there are different approaches. Let's understand the different approaches. But yeah, you actually have to meet people where they're at. When was the last time we had a public safety crime town hall? I mean, it's those types of approaches of building community and to really hear thoughts and ideas. I'm not saying I have all the ideas, but I also learn from my community just as much as, we all learn together. And I think that's something that we don't see in our city council now.
And put action to words. Because let me tell you, the most vulnerable populations where the crime is happening, we're tired of being investigated, data analyzed, and given data. And we talk about these things, these reoccurring things. It's on record time and time again, and nothing is happening. And that is happening on both sides, whether you're Democrat or Republican. We're wanting to know, are you listening? Do you know how to apply solutions? And at this point, try. That's all I can say. I do want to thank you with all my heart. There was one more other thing that I wanted to touch on. It was crime. It was our unsheltered population, our economic development. Just speak briefly about some points that you're willing to work with to revitalize the economic workforce development, as well as the economics here in this downtown area, District 4, and where you represent the Miracle Mile, that is beloved by all city individuals who know about going to the Miracle Mile and having that as an entertainment venue, having that ability to go to those, personal mom and pop shops and having those relationships on the Miracle Mile, but also saving some of the historical buildings. We lost our theater there. That was one of the first Black and brown theaters when theaters were segregated, that you can actually go see a movie. And a lot of people don't know that historical context, but that was lost on the Miracle Mile. How do we bring and solidify that? A lot of people are really worried about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought this up. I am I always get excited about our economic development in not just District 4, but throughout Stockton, the potential that we have and what we can do. Downtown Stockton, Miracle Mile, Victory Park, Yosemite Street Village, all these areas. I mean, I'm a huge proponent of small businesses, and, the Miracle Mile business owners know that I'm very active in the ad hoc meetings. We have about $20 million we secured at the state level for the Miracle Mile. And also the city council will eventually, in the next couple of months, have a proposal to approve money to help fund that additional projects. But it's really important that we support our small businesses, in particular with entrepreneurship hubs, really being able to say, if you want to start a small business, come here and get trained and the technical assistance you need to not just start a business, but to be successful, right? To be sustainable.
Small mini grants go a long way. When you got that Fat Cake grant that the city put out, those are things that will also uplift the look and the landscape of the city, but also building money poured into building infrastructure. Yeah. Right? Absolutely. Like the theater that had the coffee shop that we can listen to jazz or acoustic guitar, that's going to bring in different elements into Stockton that will support moving Stockton forward. You can't be scared of that. If you're a progressive and you're like, I don't want a bunch of, these type of people in here, that's not going to work. Yeah. That's not going to work. You got to be open to allowing for people to come together, congregate in one big cookout style. Yeah. And understand, who are you? Do you remember when a neighbor would come into the neighborhood and we would bring them a plate? Yeah. And we would say, welcome, neighbor. Here's a pie. Here's some cookies. My mother taught us that way. Yeah. My father, we're Southern hospitality type teachings. And so we still have that roots in us. Yeah. It's time for us to get back to loving one another, to being open to hearing both sides, whether we don't agree, we agree not to agree or disagree, but having class, having integrity, and conducting ourselves in a dignified manner, in a way where we can leave hope for our children and our grandchildren to come. I want to thank you again, Mr. Enriquez. I call you Mario, my friend, but Mr. Enriquez, you will be the next city council member, and you are going higher. And I know there's a lot of negativity around, this is just a stepping stone. Listen, that is a person that doesn't have growth mindset. Mm-hmm. Of course, every endeavor that we achieve or hope to achieve is a stepping stone to higher consciousness, to higher understanding, to understanding power dynamics, and understanding personal growth. So I commend you. Thank you. Keep your head up with the mudslinging that will be going around this political season. Your orientation matters, but it does not matter. Mm-hmm. You are very much qualified to lead us in the direction that we need to go in the city of Stockton. I look forward to supporting you as a person. Thank you. And please tell our viewers and our listeners where they can find you and how they can support you as well.
Yeah, no, of course. Well, thank you all again for joining in. You can follow me at Mario for Stockton on Instagram as well as TikTok, and then on Twitter we're Mr. Mario Enriquez, but also my website, votemario.com. We made it very easy, but there you can see all the issues that we are focusing on, that we're fighting for you in District 4, but also in Stockton. And any donation that you can make. This has really been a grassroots campaign, and I'm really proud that nearly half of our donations were under $250, and that was a lot of folks that were just chipping in 5, 10, 20 bucks. It was the most grassroots funded campaign this election cycle. We've raised over 6 figures, but I say that because even though people might say, oh, it's just a city council race, this seat is so important because we need this fresh live energy that we need for all of the city of Stockton. So know that you have a voice in me, you have an advocate and a champion, and know through my track record, I'm going to fight every single day to find solutions for you that benefit our entire city. So I really appreciate it.
Ashe, spoken like a true king. You know what you're talking about. And I thank you for being here on the Pruned Tree Podcast. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and also soon Twitter. We're on all platforms, Spotify, YouTube, as well as Instagram and Facebook. And I truly come to you live every Wednesday Pacific Standard Time. We thank you for this special edition to actually bring this beautiful and also candidate that's full of fire, that's ready to make change in the city of Stockton. And peace out, y'all. Rubber Ray.